This shot shows our boat, the Maggie Ann, at the public dock at the very end of Princess Louisa Marine Park. This is a classic mountain fjord. It's got mountains rising up 8,000 feet on either side, rainforest, waterfalls all along the way. A really beautiful and scenic place to visit. And so one day in early May, we decided to make the 100. Show you here in a second once I get the laser pointer going. And from there, we transited across to the Gulf Islands and went up this path. The reason why we did that is that the Strait of Georgia was forecast to be a little bit less than ideal conditions. Obviously, the more direct route would be to go straight up here, clear customs in Vancouver, say at False Creek, and then continue on up through Egmont Channel, and then on up to Princess Louisa up here. But we didn't do that. Going this particular route adds about 15 miles compared to the direct route, but it cuts down the amount of time in the Strait of Georgia by about half. And in fact, that's what we found. It's fairly calm conditions all the way up through here. We cleared customs in Nanaimo. We had to leave early to catch the 9 o'clock in the morning slack tide at Dodd Narrows. So that's one of the things you have to deal with going in this particular route. Leaving early, of course, we weren't able to clear customs at Bedwell Harbor, which would be the more commonly found spot for customs for most people heading north. Anyway, so leaving Nanaimo, we paralleled the coastline and then took a sharp jog here, basically skirting the edges of this military torpedo range known as Whiskey Gulf. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. Then cross back across the Strait of Georgia, up Agamemnon Channel. We were going to be early to the tidal pass, Malibu Rapids, which is the rapids that guards the entrance to Princess Louisa Inlet, located right here at the very junction. And so we ended up visiting Egmont, their marina and resort. And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. In case you're wondering, where do we get weather information in British Columbia? Well, that's provided by Environment Canada. So if you navigate to their website, you'll find marine forecasts for the Pacific South Coast. And in there, you can get the forecast conditions for the Strait of Georgia, both south of Nanaimo, and there's also one for north of Nanaimo. I'll tell you what's happening that day and the next day. And in addition, you can get the actual conditions, weather conditions, that are reported at the light stations, Mary Island, Chrome Island, and Entrance Island. And in addition to that, we've got current information from a couple of buoys here, Halibut Bank and Sentry Shoal. And you go to this pull-down menu, and it'll give you these locations, and you can click on them to get the data that you want for that particular location. And you can get current conditions for those, as well as the past 24-hour conditions, so you can kind of see how things are progressing over time. This is a close-up of the Whiskey Gulf torpedo range in order to find out whether or not it's active, or whether or not it's so prohibited for you to get into it. You can call control on VHF 10 or 16, and there's also a couple of phone numbers here that you can call to listen to recorded messages. If it's not active, then instead of taking this circuitous route, you can go pretty much straight across and save yourself a little bit of time. So as I mentioned earlier, we stopped at Egmont. There's several places that you can rent, including these very nice little geodesic domes. They're called glamping cabins, I guess, for glamorous camping. And nice. If you look inside, they've got a couple of rattan chairs and tables and a nice bed. So it's much more comfortable, I would imagine, than taking our own tent and sleeping bags. They look out over the channel here, and there's some neat places that you can go walk to. Skookumchuck Rapids, for example. Looking down here, you can see, if you squint, the Maggie Ann, our Ranger tug side tied to the dock here. Leaving Egmont, you immediately start seeing beautiful mountain scenery as you're entering into Jervis Inlet on your way up to Princess Louisa. And when you get there, you'll see the Young Life Christian Youth Camp facilities situated here on the point, and just immediately to the right is where the Malibu Rapids are. In order to determine slack time at Malibu Rapids, you use a reference station, Point Atkinson, and you add 25 minutes to the high water slack time and 35 minutes to low water slack time to calculate the slack at Malibu. I think that's approximate, but so be prudent to check to make sure any overfalls have disappeared before you actually enter into the rapids. And the cut's fairly narrow and hard to see boats on the opposite side of those rocks. So captains are asked to make a security call on Channel 16 prior to entering into the rapids. So making our way down the fjord, there are waterfalls on either side, culminating in this very cool Chatterbox Falls at the very end. And here's Lorraine and our boat parked at the public dock. There's plenty of room on either side of this 250-foot long dock, so it'll accommodate quite a few boats. When we were there in early May, there's only one other boat that came in, and they left after a couple of hours. In the summer, I expect it'd be quite a bit busier than this, and if the dock is full, there's places to anchor on the southeast side of the inlet near the head, as well as there are 4 mooring buoys at McDonald Island, which is about halfway down the inlet that you can try and pick up as well. The mist from the falls creates this, very moist rainforest kind of environment. So many of the trees, especially the maples, are covered with moss, this emerald green, beautiful moss, as well as that creates a very favorable environment for ferns and fungi, as we can see here. The last slide just shows the bathymetry for the rapids and the contours, as well as a satellite view of the same.